Story 1. The sound from the basement. It was supposed to be a quiet weekend. My parents were out of town, and for the first time in my life, I had the house completely to myself. No curfew, no noise, just me, junk food, a stack of horror DVDs, and total freedom. The house was an old two-story place in upstate New York, built in the 1930s. It creaked constantly, the floors, the walls, even the pipes. But I'd grown up there, so I was used to it. The weirdness was part of the charm. It was Friday night when things got strange. I had just finished a pizza and was halfway through a cheesy slasher film when I heard a sound. A dull thump. Faint, but clear. I muted the TV and listened. Another thump. It was coming from below me, the basement. At first, I thought it was the boiler. That old thing made all kinds of noises. But this didn't sound mechanical. It sounded deliberate. I tried to brush it off and went back to my movie. But 10 minutes later, it happened again. Louder. TMP. Like something heavy being dropped onto concrete. I paused the movie and stood up. My skin prickled. I stared at the door leading down to the basement. It was closed as always, the kind of door that creaked like in horror movies. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe something fell off a shelf. I told myself, the detergent bottle or a paint can. Still, I locked the basement door, just in case, and went back to the couch. Around 1 a.m., I was dozing off when I heard it again. Not a thump this time. A scraping, like something being dragged across the concrete floor. Slow, purposeful. My heart froze. There was no way a detergent bottle was making that sound. I turned off the TV and sat in silence. The scraping continued for a few seconds, then stopped. I called out, "Hello." Silence. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold. Knocking. From inside the basement, right behind the door. 3 knocks. Measured. Calm. Like someone letting me know they were there. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, but my finger hovered over the call button. What would I say? That my basement is knocking at me. I stood in the hallway for a full minute, not breathing. Then I did something incredibly stupid. I unlocked the door. I didn't open it, just unlocked it. Instantly, the knocking stopped. It was dead silent now. I backed away and went to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. I left all the lights on. I didn't sleep that night. At 5 a.m., just as the sky began to lighten, I heard footsteps. From inside the house. Not loud, not hurried. Just calm footsteps, walking up the basement stairs. Then they stopped, right behind my bedroom wall. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I stayed in bed, staring at the door, paralyzed. Then the doorknob twitched, not turning, just a slight rattle, as if someone was testing it. I reached for my phone with shaking hands and called 911. This time, I pressed the button. The dispatcher picked up almost instantly. 911, what's your emergency? I whispered into the phone, trying to keep my voice steady. There's someone in my house. I think they came up from the basement. I'm home alone. They're outside my bedroom door. She immediately went into action mode. What's your address? Are you safe? Can you stay locked in the room? I gave her the address, and she told me to stay quiet and not hang up. Officers were already en route. She stayed on the line, asking me to describe the sounds, telling me to stay calm. And then, the doorknob turned again. More forcefully, I whispered, "He's trying to come in." I could hear the dispatcher relaying everything to the officers. She told me to move away from the door. I did, inching toward the corner of the room. Then, boom. Something slammed into the door hard enough to rattle the hinges. I let out a short, involuntary scream. The dispatcher said, "Stay with me. Police are 2 minutes away." The pounding came again, then again. Something, or someone, was throwing their entire weight into trying to break down my door. And then, just like that, It stopped. No more pounding. No more movement. Silence. I stayed frozen for what felt like hours. Then, outside, I saw red and blue lights flashing through the window. I screamed, "I'm in here!" And the cops burst in less than a minute later. 2 officers swept the house. Another stayed with me, trying to keep me calm. I could barely speak. I just kept pointing toward the basement door. When they opened it, the officer leading the way froze. The steps leading down were covered in muddy footprints. Bare feet. They followed the tracks down. I waited in the kitchen, trembling, clutching a glass of water with both hands. After what felt like forever, one of the officers came back up, alone. "There's a mattress down there," he said, face pale. "A blanket, a few food wrappers, and a bucket. Someone's been living under your house." They didn't find him. He was gone. No signs of forced entry. All windows locked. But whoever he was, he had been down there for a while. Long enough to make a home. Long enough to memorize the layout of the house. And when I unlocked the door the first time, I invited him in. I never stayed there alone again. My parents had a new lock installed and motion sensor lights put around the house. But I never really felt safe there afterward, because I'll never forget that final moment. As the police left, one of the officers walked back up to me and said, "There was one more thing." He handed me a small piece of paper they'd found taped to the inside of the basement door. Just 5 words, scribbled in shaky handwriting. "Thank you for the invitation. Story 2, The Face in the Window." I used to think the creepiest part of our house was the basement, but I was wrong. It was the kitchen window. Our house sits in a quiet suburb, the kind with trimmed lawns and nosy neighbors. My parents went on a weekend trip to visit relatives, and I, being 17 and mature, convinced them I could handle a house alone. Friday night started fine. Pizza, soda, YouTube on the living room TV. It was around 11:30 p.m. when I walked into the kitchen to grab another drink. I didn't bother turning the light on. Moonlight poured in through the wide window above the sink. I opened the fridge, closed it, turned toward the sink, and that's when I saw it. A face, staring at me through the window. White, male, middle-aged, pale skin, shaved head. His eyes were wide, too wide, and he wasn't blinking. I screamed and stumbled backward, nearly dropping the soda. My heart slammed against my ribs. When I looked back, he was gone. I grabbed a kitchen knife and ran to the front door, flicking on the porch lights. No one. Not on the lawn, not on the driveway. I ran to every window, checked every door, all locked. The backyard was pitch black, only the faint outline of the fence visible. I convinced myself maybe it was a reflection, a trick of the light. I hadn't turned on the kitchen light. Maybe I saw myself, but I don't look like that. I kept the lights on all night. By morning, I felt ridiculous. I even laughed at myself in the mirror while brushing my teeth. "You scared yourself with a reflection," I said. "Good job, genius." But later that day, things got worse. I went outside to take out the trash. As I walked past the side of the house, I noticed something in the dirt beneath the kitchen window. Footprints. Deep, clear, leading toward the window, and then away. Someone had definitely been standing there. Not a reflection. That night, I locked every door, every window. Drew the curtains. I didn't even watch anything. Just lay in bed, too wired to sleep. Around 1 a.m., I heard it. A soft, tapping sound. Tap, tap, tap. I held my breath. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from downstairs. I crept out of bed and made my way to the hallway. The tapping continued, methodical, slow, not banging, just tapping. I followed the sound to the living room, heart pounding, hands shaking. I peeked through the edge of the curtain. He was back. The man, standing in my backyard, not moving, not blinking, just tapping on the living room window with his finger, one long, slow motion at a time. Tap. I stumbled back, grabbed my phone, and ran to my room. I called the police. The dispatcher stayed on the line until the cops arrived. They found nothing. Again. But they did see the footprints. They searched the backyard. No signs of forced entry. No fingerprints. Could be some weirdo casing the neighborhood, one officer said. Keep everything locked. Call us if he comes back. I didn't sleep a second that night. The next day, I begged my parents to come home early. They agreed. And for the next few weeks, nothing happened. I started to convince myself it was over. Until one morning, while pouring cereal, I glanced out the kitchen window again. The footprints were back, fresh, and this time, there was a Polaroid, tucked into the window frame, barely visible. I opened the door and retrieved it with trembling fingers. It was a photo of me, taken from outside, through the window. While I was sitting in the living room watching TV, I dropped it and ran to my room, locked the door, and called the police again. But I already knew. This wasn't over. The officers came again. They looked at the photo, took it as evidence, scanned the area. But just like last time, nothing. No trespassing signs were posted. My dad even installed a motion sensor light in the backyard. But deep down, I knew that none of it would help. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't think. I kept glancing at every window like I was being watched. Around 2 a.m., the motion light in the backyard snapped on. I froze. It stayed on for maybe 5 seconds, then flicked off again. I stared out the living room window for a full 5 minutes. Then, the doorbell rang. I jumped. No one rings your doorbell at 2 a.m. I crept to the front door. Didn't open it. Just looked through the peephole. No one. I checked the driveway. Empty. I backed away slowly. And just then, I heard something even worse than the doorbell. A voice. From the backyard. It was quiet. Raspy. Male. I saw you smile. My skin turned to ice. I ran to my parents' room, locked myself inside, and called the cops again. I waited there, curled in a ball on the bed, clutching a baseball bat I'd found under the dresser. When the police arrived, they searched the property thoroughly. And this time, they found something. A sleeping bag, tucked behind our backyard shed. Dirty, moldy, but clearly used recently. There were wrappers, empty cans, and a journal. The journal had pages filled with scribbles and drawings, and photos. All of me, through windows, in my room, on the couch, eating, laughing, sleeping, dozens of them. The earliest one was from 3 months ago. He'd been watching me the whole time. They never caught the guy. The shed became evidence. The journal was handed over, and I spent the next year sleeping with every curtain drawn tight. I don't go near windows at night anymore. And I never, ever leave the kitchen light off. Story 3. The Man in the Attic. It started with the footsteps. They were faint at first, soft, like creaking boards shifting under the weight of something or someone, moving slowly across the ceiling. At first, I thought it was nothing. Our house was old. Wood bends, floors settle, but it always happened around the same time. 1:30 a.m. I live in a one-story house, no upstairs, just a small attic above the bedrooms, the kind of crawl space with old suitcases, forgotten Christmas decorations, and dust-covered memories. The first night I heard the footsteps, I brushed it off. The second night, I got up and checked the hallway. Nothing. The third night, I stood in the hallway, staring at the attic entrance, a square wooden panel in the ceiling. There was no ladder, no pull string, just a panel you had to push open with your hand. It was closed, perfectly flush, but the footsteps kept coming. Slow, deliberate, back and forth. I told my parents the next morning. My dad laughed. "You're hearing raccoons." I didn't argue. But deep down, I didn't buy it. Raccoons don't walk like people. A few days passed without incident. Then, one night, I woke up to a sound I will never forget. Breathing. Above me. Not loud, not strained, just breathing. Like someone lying directly on the ceiling above my bed, calm and steady. I sat up in bed, heart racing, straining my ears. The room was silent, except for that sound. Inhale, exhale, inhale. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The moment I did, the breathing stopped. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, I convinced my dad to check the attic. He pulled a chair into the hallway, pushed the panel open, and shined a flashlight around. Nothing, he said, just dust and spider webs. I didn't believe him. That night, I set up my phone in the hallway, pointing it directly at the attic door. I hit record and left it overnight. The next morning, I checked the footage. The first few hours, nothing. Then, at 1:28 a.m., something happened. The panel shifted. Slightly. Not enough to fall open, but enough to cast a shadow. Enough to prove something was up there. I paused the video. Just before the panel moved, something passed across the screen. A shadow, human-shaped. My hands went cold. I showed my parents. They were silent. That night, my dad bolted the attic panel shut from the outside. Nailed it shut. If someone's messing with us, he said, they're not getting in again. I felt safer. For 2 days. Until I found the note. It was under my pillow. A small folded square of paper, yellowed at the edges. The handwriting was shaky, almost childlike. It said, I liked it better when it was quiet. I stared at the note for what felt like hours. I hadn't told anyone else about the noises, about the breathing, about the time it all started. So how did someone know? I ran to my parents. They were visibly shaken. My dad tried to act tough, but I could see the worry behind his eyes. That same morning, he unbolted the attic panel and climbed up again, this time with a flashlight and a hammer. He didn't come down for almost 10 minutes. When he did, he was pale. There's something up there, he said quietly. I don't know how we missed it. We called the police. When they arrived, they climbed up with proper equipment. What they found made my skin crawl. A sleeping bag, a pile of fast food wrappers, empty water bottles, a small battery-powered lamp, a stack of notebooks. Someone had been living in our attic. But that wasn't the worst part. One of the officers opened the notebooks. They were filled with sketches, drawings of me, sleeping, eating, watching TV, sitting at my desk, in every room of the house. In one, I was brushing my teeth. In another, I was looking out the window. In another, I was reading a book in bed. Each sketch was dated. Each one was labeled with the time it was drawn. Some from weeks ago, others from just days ago. That wasn't even possible. The attic had no openings to the house, no vents, no gaps in the ceiling. And yet, this person had seen everything. Then came the worst image, a drawing of me sleeping. From above, the angle matched the position of the attic crawl space, directly above my bed. He had been lying there, night after night, watching me sleep. We moved out that week. The police never found him. He vanished, along with the sleeping bag, the wrappers, the lamp. Only the notebooks remained, now sealed in evidence. Sometimes, I wonder how long he was up there before I noticed. How many nights he watched in silence. How many drawings he made that we never found. But the worst thought, what if he's still watching someone else now?